Hey y'all, I'm super patriot and freedom enthusiast Dan Upton, and like 38% of the American public, I don't believe in gun control. Yeah, back in my day, they didn't politicize Captain America. No sir, making him black, making him fight border security. Bah! Captain America, he's America, and America's something everybody can agree on, like apple pie and hot dogs. Yeah, well, kiss my ass, because I'm a vegan that doesn't eat sugar, and guess what? Captain America has always been real political. He was created by two liberal New York Jews to combat Nazis. Come on, he's been super progressive since the beginning of time. So here's a whole bunch of super progressive and sometimes super weird stuff that Captain America has done. Let's start with Captain America number 175. Cap was tracking a group called the Secret Empire, whose goal was to take over the United States by supplanting the president with a mysterious leader known as Number One. While writer Steve Englehart didn't explicitly reveal the identity of Number One in that issue, it was strongly alluded to the fact, and later confirmed by Englehart himself, that the leader was actually Richard Milhous Nixon. Cap tried to prevent the man from committing suicide in front of him in the Oval Office, but failed. Look, I get it. If there was a comic with Obama or Hillary Donald Trump committing suicide, people would justifiably lose their shit. Right now, maybe even more so. I would have the best suicide. It would be a great suicide. Tremendous suicide. It was really controversial at the time, but let's just consider how culturally pervasive and shocking the idea of a man who had run against Kennedy, and by 1973, Kennedy was practically canonized like a saint like Lincoln and Washington in the American consciousness. That man who had run against Kennedy was caught lying to the American public. It was completely inconceivable. But hey, at least Marvel didn't do to Nixon what Jack Kirby did. Just model Darkseid after him. No. Seriously, Darkseid is supposed to be Richard Nixon. Captain America 344. For those of you that think that Cap has never been politicized before, this is so very not subtle, because Cap has renounced the identity of Captain America, now going merely by the Captain and wearing a costume that would merely be U.S. agents later on. In August of 1988, Cap tried to stop the Serpent Society from poisoning the DC water supply. That's Washington, not Superman. Anyhow, they had a plot to try and turn people into giant snakes through some kind of weird poison, and turn them into giant snakes more than they already are. Oh wait, that's the not-so-subtle metaphor. Cap is too late to stop the great communicator from drinking the poison, which turns him into a giant snake that refuses to be tread on. Oh wait, that's the metaphor. And then Reagan apparently sweats the poison out and is like, you know what, actually I'm completely cool. And there's Cap Wolf. Woof. In the process of fighting werewolves and a hypnotized Wolverine, like you do, Cap gets turned into a werewolf, like you do, dubbed Cap Wolf, because it was 1992 and that's what comics did. He fights the evil scientist that turns him into that monstrosity, and with the help of Wolverine, Cable, Shatterstar, and Domino, because apparently it was 1992 and what weren't they all doing together, he manages to turn himself into not a werewolf. Don't you hate it when you get transported by train to a pocket dimension controlled by a Nazi scientist? Well, Cap just calls that Tuesday. Cap was transported to a place called Dimension Z by Arnim Zola during the better part of Rick Remender's run of Cap. Remender loves French science and people being chased by mutants, and that's definitely a major part of this run. Cap escapes from the facility run by Arnim Zola in the capital of Dimension Z, Zolandia, with a child that he names Ian, who he raises as his son for 10 years in that dimension, despite knowing that he's genetically engineered by Zola. After a battle that costs the life of one of Cap's major allies, read it, Ian rejects the identity of Leopold Zola, who he was born to be, and grows to adulthood and later becomes a part of the regular Marvel Universe, working alongside Sam Wilson as the new Nomad. At the end of Rick Remender's run, a Chinese nationalist supervillain used his weird power to suck all the young out of Steve Rogers and render him a 90-year-old man. Dude still ran S.H.I.E.L.D. for a while and was part of the Uncanny Avengers. Can I get some of those Vita rays? I'm a third that age, and I still ache waking up at 6 a.m. With the very first issue of Captain America Sam Wilson, writer Nick Spencer put his finger on the pulse of the issue of immigration in the United States and had Sam Wilson take a stand. And good for him. Because the new Cap took on the Serpent Society, again, who's actively recruiting American citizens to violently capture or murder people attempting to cross the border into the United States. Not surprisingly, this pissed a lot of the usual suspects off. But the very controversy born of the decision to run that issue was addressed, predicted, and rebutted within the very same issue in case the media isn't predictable enough. People even started moaning in the comic itself about how the old Cap never took stands on issues. Oh, you mean like how he didn't resign during the Nixon administration? You mean how he didn't used to fight a former Captain America who became a white supremacist? Oh, you mean how he never fought Snake Reagan? Oh, you mean like how he didn't punch Hitler? Anyways, get over it. Cap has always been politicized, and people have always wrung their hands about it. People who think that Cap is a conservative icon, and has always been a conservative icon, and has always stood for very simple, traditional values, just never read Steve Englehart's Captain America, or Ed Brubaker's, or almost any other writers either. So that gets us to the whole Hail Hydra thing. Nick Spencer is one of my favorite comic writers, not just of Marvel, but of all time right now. He writes high concept, wryly witty, crisp, real dialogue, and very urgent action. All three of those things are very difficult to balance. Most writers balance one or two of those very well, but rarely all of them. I'm a huge fan of Grant Morrison, but while Nick Spencer certainly isn't nearly as weird, he never fails to wrap up a story, or completely deliver. So, I wasn't real freaked out or totally pissed off when they spoiled the end of Captain America Steve Rogers #1, and showing that he had aligned with Hydra. Number one, it's good publicity. Number two, it's a comic, there's going to be an explanation, and people do things like this all the time. Number three, it was the biggest troll on Fox News I've seen in a while. So if you haven't read issue 2, I'm not going to spoil it for you. But if you've read all of Pleasant Hill, that whole arc where Maria Hill and S.H.I.E.L.D. use a cosmic cube to create a prison where villains changed into Pleasantville versions of themselves into a weird, idyllic sort of Decorah, Iowa, well, you can bet that that has something loosely to do with it. Nick Spencer is probably going to go down as one of the greatest writers of Captain America of all time, along with Steve Englehart and Ed Brubaker, specifically because he pushes boundaries. Cap isn't a sacred object from the beginning of the Union. But like firearms and hot dogs, he's become fetishized as a weird symbol of the United States for the last 30 years or so, to a really weird degree. But Cap was created by New Deal era New York liberal Jews. He represented an America that they knew, an America that was grown by immigrants, some of them illegal, a nation beset with a question of what to do with an expansionist, fascist regime on not just one, but 2 different coasts. But while the questions of the day are both familiar and very different at the same time, what Cap represents and what he should represent to the American public is our collective conscience and our struggle to create a more perfect union, not through violence, but through service to one another and sacrifice to our fellow human beings, whether they're American or not, at a civic level. And with that, over the July 4th weekend, Marvel announced another project that they're going to be doing that has me super excited, because I'm a big fan of writer Al Ewing. He's been doing New Avengers and also been doing the Ultimates for a little while now. Both of them are fantastic books, and he's an incredible writer. Very funny, but also very sharp, and he writes real weird, high-concept stuff, once again like Nick Spencer. Marvel's hiring really good writers. Anyway, New Avengers is going to turn into USA Avengers, which is going to have a weird lineup, but be super, super, super patriotic, apparently. It's going to have an Iron Patriot, who's actually the daughter of Ho Jensen, who helped Iron Man build the first Iron Man suit. It's going to be headed by Roberto da Costa, also known as Sunspot, one of the New Mutants, and a Brazilian national. It's going to have Cannonball, Sam Guthrie, he's from Kentucky, that's super American, right? As well as Thunderbolt Ross and Squirrel Girl, just to name a few of those characters. And it looks like it's going to be absolutely fantastic and really, really fun. I can't wait to pick it up. Hopefully they find a way to put Captain Britain in there just because he's red, white, and blue, because that would be funny somehow. Anyway, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.